Coming up, what will an agreement to tackle the climate crisis mean for the coal industry?
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 11.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. A breakthrough at the International Climate Summit in Dubai known as COP28. An agreement to tackle the climate crisis is being hailed as both historic and not enough. But does it also mean a nail in the coffin to our coal industry? CBS's Ben Tracy has the details.
There was a lot of clapping because for the first time in nearly 30 years of UN climate summits, nations agreed to tackle the root cause of the climate crisis: fossil fuels. The final agreement calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels and accelerating action in this critical decade. Emissions from coal, oil, and gas are rapidly heating the planet, but until now, fossil fuels had been the unwritten F words, never actually named in one of these summit agreements. Tougher language calling for a fossil fuel phase-out was blocked by major oil exporters, including Saudi Arabia.
The message coming out of this COP is we are moving away from fossil fuels. We're not turning back. That is the future.
But that is not the present. The world is producing more fossil fuels than ever, and planet-warming emissions are going up, not down. This is the hottest year in recorded history, and the impacts of climate change are getting worse, from deadly heat waves to stronger storms and rising seas. The new agreement calls for tripling renewable energy worldwide by 2030 in order to use less fossil fuels.
Do you think what everyone has agreed to here will actually meaningfully address the climate crisis?
Was this enough? No, of course it's not enough.
Climate scientist Catherine Hayhoe.
This is one step along the journey that is not about saving the planet. The planet will be orbiting the sun long after we're gone. This is a journey towards saving us.
But this agreement, while historic, is also non-binding. It's a promise enforced by international peer pressure. What matters now is what nations actually do. The U.S. supports transitioning away from fossil fuels, but is also currently the world's largest oil producer. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Now, we have not seen any reaction so far from Kentucky lawmakers to this new agreement. A judge says former President Donald Trump's 2020 election interference case in Washington will be put on hold while he further pursues his claims that he is immune from prosecution. Meanwhile, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear appeals that could upend hundreds of charges stemming from the Capitol riot, including against Trump. An obstruction of an official proceeding charge has been brought against more than 300 defendants following the January 6th insurrection. A formal impeachment inquiry into President Biden has begun on Capitol Hill. The effort, led by House Republicans, passed earlier this evening, just hours after the president's son, Hunter Biden, defied a congressional subpoena. CBS's Natalie Brand has more on that from Washington.
212. The resolution is adopted.
A cheer went up from House Republicans as they voted along party lines to formally authorize an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Republicans allege he may have benefited from his family's foreign business dealings.
It's very clear the White House has been obstructing our investigation. I think the message sent today is very loud and clear. We expect them to comply.
Republicans now have better legal standing to demand interviews and documents from the White House. So far, the year-long House GOP investigation into the Bidens has not led to any direct evidence of wrongdoing by the president.
And this Congress, the majority, will do everything in their power to ensure that Donald Trump gets reelected.
The vote followed a rare public statement from Hunter Biden, who defied a congressional subpoena for a closed-door deposition earlier today. He said he was always willing to testify publicly.
Republicans do not want an open process where Americans can see their tactics.
Just last week, Hunter Biden was indicted on tax evasion charges, and he's facing gun charges. He acknowledged mistakes he's made and defended his father.
There's no evidence to support the allegations that my father was financially involved in my business because it did not happen.
The White House has routinely stayed quiet about the investigations into Hunter Biden, but today Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said the president was familiar with what his son was going to say during his visit to Capitol Hill. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Washington.
Congressman Hal Rogers was among those who voted for the impeachment inquiry. House Republicans are now recommending Hunter Biden be investigated for a contempt of Congress criminal charge. In a statement, President Biden said of Republicans, quote, "Instead of doing anything to make Americans' lives better, they are focused on attacking me with lies." The Supreme Court has agreed to take up a dispute over a medication used in the most common method of abortion in the United States. It's the court's first abortion case since it overturned Roe v. Wade last year. The justices said they will hear appeals from the Biden administration and the New York-based maker of the drug mifepristone, asking the court to reverse an appellate ruling that would cut off access to the drug through the mail and impose other restrictions, even in states where abortion remains legal. The longest-serving Republican Senate Majority Floor Leader in Kentucky history will step down after the upcoming session. Senator Damon Thayer will not run for re-election. Jeremy Toms caught up with Thayer to learn more about why he's leaving the role and what's still to come in his career.
Senator Damon Thayer first entered the Senate chamber in 2003.
I remember when I first took office, I dropped my son off at his kindergarten class.
And 2 decades later,
both he and my younger daughter were able to vote for me in my last election.
He's risen to be one of the most powerful political figures in Frankfort. But now at the age of 56, the senator from Georgetown feels it's the right time to step away.
You know, I just feel like it's better to leave a little early than stay too long. At the end of my term, it'll be 22 years in the Senate, 12 years as majority leader.
Thayer says he's accomplished almost all of his political goals, especially after all that got done in the most recent session.
We passed a lot of really big bills: sports betting, medical marijuana. We repealed the bourbon barrel tax.
Justices and members, we are ready to convene.
Knowing 2024 will bring his last session, Thayer hopes to make every day count.
We've got to deal with the school choice issue. There's a potential constitutional amendment to put on the ballot to let the people decide. There's some really good tough on crime bills coming out of the Louisville delegation. Energy is a big issue. Coal is a big issue.
After the end of his term, Thayer will move into the private sector. And while he may not be completely parting ways with politics,
I may run for higher office someday.
Thayer hopes his time in the legislature holds a lasting impact.
I hope they say that I stood with conviction, that I'm a fighter and a crusader for conservative values, and that I played a small role in helping to move this state towards a better, more prosperous future.
In Lexington, Jeremy Toms, WKYT.
Senator Thayer says it's too soon to talk about who would take his Senate seat, but he has encouraged Senator Julie Rocky Adams to consider running for floor leader. The senator from Louisville has been in leadership as caucus chair, and Thayer says she's intuitive about their members' wants and needs.
Well, some more freezing weather is on the way as we go into tonight under a clear sky. Let's take a live look at the radar this evening. As you can see, we are dry as high pressure continues to sit over the mountains. So more dry weather is on the way tonight. Also on Thursday and Friday, and those temperatures already below freezing for many places, down to 27 for Grundy, 26 over in Irvine, and 29 for Manchester. So we are cold as we go into this evening. Those low temperatures back in the upper 20s and lower 30s as you wake up on Thursday. And again, we stay dry overnight under a clear sky. Now we are cold as you wake up and walk out the door, but some nice weather once again on the way by Thursday as high pressure also continues. We stay dry under a sunny sky. High temperatures back in the middle to possibly upper 50s in some areas, but we are tracking potentially that next rainmaker by Sunday, also Monday. Those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
Cameron, thank you. A man accused of committing horrific crimes against 3 members of his own family appeared in court today. Austin Prather is accused of killing his father, grandfather, and trying to kill his grandmother in Pulaski County. Prather was recently brought back to Kentucky after he was captured in Indiana. Officials still don't know much about the motive. Attorneys say it's too early to talk to us about the case. The indictment includes the charges of robbery in the first degree. A pretrial conference was set for February 22nd. A nonprofit is supporting the families of 2 fallen Eastern Kentucky officers. The Tunnel to Towers Foundation paid off the mortgages for the families of London police officer Logan Medlock and Prestonsburg officer Jacob Chaffins. Officers Medlock and Chaffins were each killed in the line of duty last year. Earlier this year, Tunnel to Towers paid off the mortgage for the family of fallen Scott County Deputy Caleb Conley. Floyd County is working to help those impacted by last year's floods with funding from FEMA. FEMA announced more than $1.5 million in awarded funds for the county to purchase 13 properties impacted by the flood. The homes are part of the more than 100 applicants for the FEMA buyout program. Officials say the process has been quicker than usual, which they hope is a good sign for the homeowners still waiting.
The voluntary process that we've had before has taken 4 to 6 years. FEMA has, this money has been appropriated in the last 6 months. And like I said, we've already got 18 homes that we've closed on.
More than 20 homeowners are expected to close on buyout deals by February. Williams hopes the FEMA funding will continue to roll in until everyone is back on solid ground. With consumer prices cooling a bit, the Federal Reserve is leaving interest rates alone. A report out Tuesday shows inflation has dropped from 2022's peak of 9.1% to just 3.1%. Today marks the 3rd time the Federal Reserve has decided against a rate hike. Economic projections point to the possibility of 3 small cuts in 2024. The Dow jumped to a record high close above 37,000 points today after that news. Coming up on Mountain News at 11, a historic elk restoration project in the mountains receives national recognition.
And we stay dry tomorrow, but rain chances are looming later this week. Those details coming up.